Hello, and welcome back to Experiments
Experiments
in
in
Love.
Love. This is Ash,
And this is Crystal.
and we're very glad to have you back in the lab today.
That's right. So, how did that last episode go for you with the intimacy backlash?
Dum dum dum.
Leave your comments below. We'd like to hear how you may have used those tips.
Right. Well, today we got quite the doozy of a topic. We're going to be talking about racism.
Gasp! Because the holidays are coming up and we need to talk about it because relatives.
Right? Whether they're far or near, they seem to come out of the woodworks for the holidays, and it's quite awkward to be sitting aside that awkward uncle who's going off about MAGA this and those people that.
Oh, no, no, no. So, no. Because you love yourself and your relationship enough, we thought it would help to talk about internalized racist oppression and internalized white supremacy so that you might have some talking points for those challenging relatives.
So internalized racist oppression and internalized white supremacy, what is it?
A great resource my partner and I used was the Dismantling Racism Project from Western States Center. It states that internalized racist oppression is the internalization by people of color of the images, stereotypes, prejudices, and myths promoted by the racist system about people of color in this country. Our thoughts and feelings about ourselves, people of our own racial group, or other people of color are based on the racist messages we receive from the broader system.
Internalized white supremacy, and this might get you concerned with the word, the phrasing white supremacy. I should state that this isn't saying that you're a white supremacist, it's saying that you have internalized characteristics from a society that has benefited from white supremacy. So, with that said, internalized white supremacy, it affects white people in the dominant white culture in many ways. Some of these include resistance to change, paternalism, ignorance and misinformation, scapegoating, blaming, labeling, self righteous anger, continued oppression, resistance to acknowledging and correcting the past, and individualism.
Right. And for people of color, the way internalized racist oppression shows up is through self doubt, an inferiority complex, self hatred, powerlessness, hopelessness, apathy, addictive behavior, abusive and violent relationships, and conflict between people of color communities.
Oof, those are both quite some lists.
It's a lot. It's a lot. It's important to look at how we've experienced this on our own and then come into a relationship with each other with these issues. That can be kind of daunting.
Right? Yeah, I came into this relationship thinking that I knew myself and that I really didn't need to change much. And now I'm looking at this list and going, oh my goodness, how did I live this way? Especially with like individualism and resistance to change. How could I be in a good partnership if I, one, was not willing to change and take accountability, and two, if I try to do everything on my own and didn't involve my partner at all?
Yeah, then you might as well be single.
Right? But unfortunately, that's how society tells us to be, that we're all supposed to be, individualistic and succeed on our own merit and all this stuff without relying on support of others, and oh, that we're supposed to have all the answers and blah 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 blah. I just read that long list. There's so much that is fed to us that just is not beneficial to being in a coupleship, let alone being with yourself.
Let alone being in an interracial relationship on top of it.
Right?
Baby. You gotta name this stuff. And what I've looked at is within myself and holding on to the self-doubt and the inferiority complex, if I'm not willing to show up and be 50-50 with my partner in the relationship, then it's like I don't exist. And that's not how a relationship works.
Right.
It can be, and this is kind of, I was just thinking about how divorce is on the rise. Well, if we are operating in these two systems of individualism and an inferiority complex and powerlessness, that's not conducive to being in loving relationships. It's no wonder why marriages are failing. So we do have to address these issues.
Right. And you can definitely see where power dynamics come from in relationships too, even if it's between two white people or to people of the dominant sexuality, race, whatever it is, they're warring with individuality. We're warring with resistance to change, self-righteous anger, resistance to accepting the past or changing it, all that stuff. And of course, we're not going to be acting as partners because we're designed by our society to be for ourselves and basically pushing back against anybody who tries to compromise that. Where I've found with dismantling this part, it's a continuing process, but I feel it's allowed me to be actually working as a partner with my partner. Imagine that.
Right? And so the biggest thing that we talk about in our coupleship is awareness, being aware of how we are participating in these patterns, so that we can create the change. Because you can't really make change if you don't acknowledge that something is going on or starting to see that something is going on.
Right.
And sorry, I was just thinking of with the internalized white supremacy, the continued oppression is another reason why relationships are failing. I'm sorry, but this dominant system does not help at all. And for me to stay oppressed, and that's what I was doing in the relationship, is like, yeah, I'm going to stay less than, I'm going to stay not enough. But then when I have a real feeling about being my whole self, then there's going to be this entire fight that happens because no, the universe does not want either person to be oppressed. So being equals means that we have to stand on equal footing with each other and to not put one person down. One of the things that I was really thinking of an example of experiencing this, because some people are like, if you just stop talking about racism, it'll go away. No, it doesn't, unfortunately. I'd like for it to, but it doesn't. We were both volunteering in a very progressive church. And I was on the social justice committee, I think the welcome committee, and we were both on the worship arts committee together.
Yeah.
And I had been doing a lot more service, but when I would speak up in the worship arts committee, though I'm sitting right next to my partner who is white, people would just be like, yeah, have you considered this or that? It can't be done because of this, that, anytime that I said anything. Whereas if my partner said the exact same thing that I just said, they're like, yes, wow, brilliant.
Right.
Never thought of that.
You got a really good point there. Thank you for sharing that.
And this was a progressive liberal church. So I want to point that out.
Yeah. So, and that's the kind of the point I was trying to get at the very beginning when I'm talking about the shock value of, white supremacy. That I don't have that. No, every white person has that because of the society we live in. And as awake as we are, as aware, as liberal, as whatever you are, it's still there, and to varying degrees. And it's, as my partner stated, it's the awareness that it's there that is the first step toward really combating this within ourselves. Because, as my partner just said, a church full of liberal-minded people are inadvertently, because I don't think it was overt, but they were inadvertently putting my partner down and putting me above my partner just because of sex and race.
Right. We thought it would be important to name these things and call them out because these months of November, December are times we're going to be spending with the people who helped form these ideas in our brains. So there's got to be a way of addressing it or to saying, what works for me or what I have observed for myself. What my reality has been, Uncle Schmo, is that no one wanted to be oppressed and they didn't jump on the ships to come here.
Right. And even though this is more of a topic for another day, I do want to touch on how during the holidays we're going to be spending time with those family members that, as you said, ingrained those characteristics in us. There is a phenomenon of backsliding into those relationships too, the dynamics that were there. So during the holidays, it can be especially important to be aware that being with the family, that you might revert to old behaviors.
Right. And so no matter how much you've tried to fight for equality within your relationship and you slide back into these old patterns, it's important to have a commitment of this is how we're going to treat each other, knowing that this is happening if we're visiting with these people.
Exactly.
So, one of the things that my partner and I did that was really helpful, of course, is the awareness. But we would do something, again, it's kind of like holding a back to back meeting with each other,
Mm.
where we would read these symptoms of internalized racist oppression and internalized white supremacy. And then we would name how I have harmed our coupleship by, and we would name one of our participations as a person of color in internalized racist oppression or internalized white supremacy, because people of color, we do both. It's ingrained in us to do both.
Mm.
Or, and for the white partner to name what was his participation in internalized white supremacy.
Yeah, and then inversely, I should say, we also would do a thing where we'd state, my partner helped the coupleship and helped dismantle white supremacy, and then stating something that your partner did to help dismantle white supremacy, how they helped the coupleship. And it's really eye-opening to look at that.
Well, the other piece of that, of how our partner helped dismantle white supremacy, is it's so good in acknowledging that my partner, he was open to change. And I give a specific
Mm.
example of how he was open to change. Or I've heard my partner say, well, I've seen that my partner challenged her own apathy.
Mm.
And that was a healthy way of seeing how we are moving forward in our relationship.
Right. And then, finally, with our 10th step that we do, even with this form of it, we also look at how the coupleship helped others and how we as a couple help dismantle white supremacy. Because it's also equally important to look how we are helping outside of ourselves so that we don't just stay inside ourselves.
Exactly. And really, it's we're building a community of individuals that are wanting to address and change the systems that exist. So we do want to look at how are we helping others in dismantling white supremacy. This podcast episode is an example of us helping others in dismantling white supremacy, because now you know.
Right?
You know. Oh. But like the goal, really, if we're trying to end these systems of inequality to really bring marriages back together or relationships back together, then we have a responsibility of being around communities of people who are committed to growth, committed to healing. And so we create that by asking others to check, did you recognize what you just said might have been a little unwelcome?
Mm.
To be able to say that to someone
Right.
and to invite them to review that, and they can say, oh, what do you mean? Well, can you tell me more about what you meant when you said those people? How else could you have said that?
Mm.
Those are ways of challenging internalized white supremacy and internalized racist oppression in our friends and neighbors, not to, put the person down, but really just to build them back up and saying, I bet you didn't expect to do that.
Mm. Right.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
If you want to go the step further, education really is an important factor. My partner and I have also attended several anti-racist classes. I've gone to my partner's brain injury support group, etc., trying to get out of my own dominant thinking and get into learning, like, okay, what is my partner going through? What's her experience? And those things like that. Because, my thinking is based in internalized white supremacy. So I need to step outside of that. And I am not the one to generate those ideas. I need to learn about these things outside of myself.
Exactly. And I thank you for saying that about being differently abled. We want to point out, it's kind of the end of the episode, but even though we're talking about internalized white supremacy and internalized racist oppression, these characteristic dynamics exist in both any dominant culture and non-dominant culture experience. So
Right.
ableism versus differently abled, or sexism, homophobia. It's, you can just choose either one of what, if you are part of the dominant culture in any of those scenarios, most likely you're dealing with some of those internalized white supremacy characteristics.
Yeah.
And as internalized racist oppression can also apply for you if you're dealing with someone who's not part of a dominant side of the culture where you are.
Yeah, exactly. Did any of this resonate with you? We're hoping to hear from any of your experiences or thoughts. Please leave a comment and let's have a discussion on this, because we'd love to hear how you handled your own internalized racism or white supremacy.
Yeah. Together we can be the change we want.
Yeah. As always, this is Ash.
And this is Crystal. And this has been
Experiments in Love. Come back soon.